A worldwide study is trying to determine whether a drug treatment can lessen the impact of long COVID symptoms. It's the SCORPIO-HR study. It's being conducted in about 20 countries and will be carried out across 16 sites in South Africa. So why is this necessary? Why do we need to figure out whether these drugs or a drug can make a difference? Well, let's get some insights. I'm joined by Dr. Lize Hellstrom from the Be Part Yoluntu Centre, making time for us this morning. Doctor, good morning to you. Help me understand where this has come from. What has set this off? Why do we need this?
Good morning, Gareth. Thank you for the opportunity to share with the listeners. I think it's very important to understand that COVID-19 has not gone away. It's still around and it can actually come back. You know, we've spoken about variants and I know the public out there doesn't want to know this. I mean, we don't want to get back into a pandemic. However, we've had vaccines. This is not a vaccine, and this trial looks at treatment options and antiviral medication, which can then prevent people from becoming really very sick, and especially focusing therefore on the elderly and those who are immune compromised. We really need this because like with other medications and other bacteria and viruses, you need to tackle it on multiple platforms. So you also need a treatment, and we really urge people to come forward if they think they have COVID-19 symptoms and actually test at a center, or at our center we test people who present in the first 3 days with cold and flu symptoms. And this is very important because I think the problem is that nobody really wants to test any longer.
Yeah, no, I think everyone's got a bit of COVID-19 fatigue. You can't really blame them. Help me understand this long COVID, though, because early on in the epidemic, it was around about 5 to 10 days where you had to basically isolate yourself. But then even months later, there's people I personally know that have said they feel like they still got some of the symptoms of COVID-19. But what's the test for that? How do we know if someone has long COVID or they're just really tired all the time?
Yeah, we don't really have a test for long COVID, but what we found is that people get like reinfections, or even 6 weeks later, they're just not recovering. And fatigue would be one of the major things, severe headaches, just not getting back into your usual life sphere as you would before, unable to exercise, feeling depressed. And it's really debilitating. There's a lot of research about why and how we can manage this. And I think this is the exciting thing about this drug, that there's an early signal that it can prevent long COVID. So if we can prevent something that's really debilitating for people up front, then that's definitely worth having a good go at this medication.
So what are the underlying conditions that could exempt someone from being involved in something like this? Because there was always these concerns, wasn't there, Doctor, around comorbidities for somebody who had COVID-19. I remember there were issues like diabetes, being overweight, taking various kinds of medicines. So what's the medical exemptions in a case like this? Because I imagine if this is research and this is meant to be used for research, you're trying to isolate and get the best possible sample size.
And this is very exciting, Gareth, because in this study we're going to exclude very few people. We're not going to exclude people who's been vaccinated before. We're not going to exclude those with comorbidities. We really want them to step forward and to go to a center close to them and be tested and start on the trial, because it's especially useful for those who have diabetes or who are immune compromised from some other reason. Even patients with cancer treatments, they are also able to join the study. There are a few exclusions, but we'll let your doctor at the treatment center decide about that, because it's quite specialized in terms of what the exclusion in terms of medications that you can't use with this combination use. So I think that it's such an exciting opportunity for everybody over the age of 18 to participate in, with very few exclusions.
When you say exciting, though, because I'm just worried there's going to be a bit of confusion, Doc, that this is going to be seen. I know you touched on it earlier, but I think maybe we need to just be very clear on this. This is not a COVID-19 vaccination. This is not going to stop you from contracting COVID-19, hopefully never again, but in the future. That's not what this is. This is not a vaccine.
This is not a vaccine, it's a treatment, it's tablets. You take it once a day. The initial treatment sort of builds up with 3 tablets, and then there's one tablet for the remaining 4 days. It's not going to prevent COVID-19. It is going to prevent serious illness, and that's where it's very important, because if you do get COVID-19 and it's still around, I want to just warn people, it's definitely still around, then at least there are treatment options. You don't have to just sit there and wonder how sick you're going to be. You can, and especially very early on in the illness, the earlier you start with this treatment option, the better the outcome would be. So within the first 3 days, that is when we can actually reduce the viral load and improve your outcome, and therefore prevent serious illness.
As I start saying goodbye to you, Dr. Hellstrom, what does somebody who would like to be part of this, what do they need to do? Who do they need to go to? How do they explain this to a medical practitioner? Because to go in there and say it was the drug that we were talking about on eNCA between Dr. Hellstrom and Gareth, the doctor isn't going to know what we're talking about. So if someone is curious, where do we send them to do this?
Well, there are 16 sites across South Africa. Remember, this is a multinational study as well, already approved in Japan. But in South Africa, go to the website. Contact details can also be provided, and there would be an opportunity for you in your vicinity to take part. I think the important part is to go for your COVID test. Even most of the sites can do this for you as well. So just present yourself at one of the 16 sites, and I'm sure we can make those details available to you.
Well, I appreciate your time in speaking to us this morning. Dr. Lize Hellstrom from the Be Part Yoluntu Centre as well. So this clinical trial to assess and look at this drug, which could potentially help avoid long COVID-19 symptoms as well, at least help reduce it as well. I know it's COVID-19, it's COVID-19. I think everyone's had enough of it, of course, as well. But if it is something you're interested in, there you go. You got the details of how you can be a part of this if you would like to.